right, welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. As always, I'm Patrick, and today we have a very special guest. Now, for everyone who listens to the show, everyone's been very much looking forward to this conversation, especially after the last few that we've had, specifically talking with Vicki Joy Anderson. We were talking about sleep paralysis, and we were diving into some of these more darker forces that are around us all the time, that a lot of people for a long time had either ignored or have been told to ignore or told that it was all just made up. And through that journey, through these conversations, the name Jerry Marzinsky started getting brought up quite a bit. I was aware of Jerry, who is our guest today, for a little bit, but when I heard through conversations, other conversations were happening simultaneously, and Jerry's name kept getting brought up. I thought, what better decision to make than to get him on the show if we can, and he was kind enough to join us on the show. Now, I just want to give quick background to who Jerry is. Jerry is a BA and a medical doctor, and is a retired licensed psychotherapist.
I'm not a medical doctor.
MED. What is MED?
That's Master's of Education.
Oh, sorry, I totally misread it. I missed the dot. So a master's education, and he's a retired psychotherapist with over 35 years of experience working with and studying the thought processes of psychotic and criminally insane patients in some of the most volatile psychiatric institutions in the nation, which we're going to dive into a lot of that today. He has held the positions of Second Lieutenant Arizona Civil Air Patrol and Assistant Scoutmaster. His formal academic training comprises a BA in psychology from Temple University, a master's degree in counseling from the University of Georgia, and 2 years of study in the PhD psychology program. He is the co-author of An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind, Breaking the Spell of the Ivory Tower. He's got a lot under his belt. Welcome to the show, Jerry. What's up?
Good to be here.
Oh, thank you, man. Well, we in our field, in our world, at least, and the people who listen, you take titles and accolades with a grain of salt. And as you'll know, and you will discuss here today, a lot of people in your field with the titles, with the accolades,
crap.
Doesn't mean much, but I bring yours up today. I wanted to give your bio. I usually don't go crazy into bios. I let people just naturally, organically tell who they are. But I wanted to preface that today because this is a topic that, of all the shows that I've done over now 130 something shows, this has been the most engaging, interactive response when I just saying that someone's coming on a show. So that means that, and I've had a lot of people tell and share their experiences or someone in their family's experiences with what we're going to talk about today. So I wanted to just preface that with, for those listening, Jerry's worked with this world, with these people every day for 35 plus years. So he's experienced the spectrum, and being able to then discern and take all that and go, something's not right here with how we're handling this and approaching this. So I want to just preface all that right now. But with that, Jerry, your background and everything else, you said, and you've done at your other shows, you made it clear in your books and our emails that you realized that something wasn't right in the way things were handled in your field. If we may, let's just start off with, okay, how is the system handling patients? If that's cool with you, how is like the norm?
Well, the norm is to drug them silly. And what they're doing with these expensive toxic drugs are just suppressing psychiatric symptomatology. They're not curing anything. Mm-hmm. They cure nothing. They don't make any money by curing anything. They make money by endlessly prescribing drugs and office visits. Right. And the norm now is for the more severely psychologically disturbed, they put them on antipsychotic drugs. The side effects to these drugs are terrible. I mean, they're absolutely terrible. The side effects are actually you're being poisoned. But they're like major tranquilizers. They calm the person down, at least with schizophrenics, and that's not what the voices want. They don't want to be calmed down. They want to hype the person up. So they put these people on the drugs. They admit them to a psych hospital. They charge them, thousands and thousands of dollars. They put them on the psych drugs. They keep them there until their insurance runs out. Then they release them, with a prescription for these drugs. And they stay on the drugs for as long as they can take it, which is a lot of times just a few months, and then they go off again, get psychotic again, and the whole merry-go-round spins again. They go back into the hospital, they put them on the drugs, they lock them up, or they get suicidal and they're brought back to the hospital. It just goes round and round and round. With each revolution of the wheel, milking the insurance companies, the governments of tens of thousands of dollars every time around. You know, putting them on different, they have a formulary of different drugs, but they don't cure anything. So it's a giant fleecing operation. I mean, it's a psychiatric cabal. I call them the psychiatric mafia. You know, they cure nothing. Absolutely. Matter of fact, they don't want to cure. So, you know, a while back, I think, I don't know how long ago it was, 15 years, the National Institute of Mental Health got criticized for spending a lot more money on all kinds of other disorders rather than schizophrenia. You know, so instead of spending more money for research on schizophrenia, they redefined the definition of schizophrenia and lowered the number of people with schizophrenia in the United States and made those numbers jump up. And I have little doubt that the pharmaceutical industry was behind that. They don't want a cure for schizophrenia, and we've got one. You know, we proved it. I mean, a handful of people, more than a handful, have recovered. Not a lot, you know, maybe 10, but it shows it can be done without the drugs.
So if we may, because I think this is all going to organically happen, I just want to let you kind of flow with this train of thought. What is that cure? Because as I have some questions that people have asked is going, I've had family or I experience or whatever. Is there a way to cure this? And because people said, all they've been telling us is drugs. All they've been telling. So
yeah, drugs, no.
Right.
First of all, they have to know the truth. And the truth is that those voices are not hallucinations, like the psychiatric mafia says. They run a series of patterns. And
which you did send to me, by the way. I did look over. So we can definitely talk about that if you want to dive into some of the specifics. I know I definitely have questions and thoughts on it. So, but you're saying that they run in patterns. It's not hallucinations like they say.
No, there's like 23 different patterns. Okay. So if they're running patterns, they're not hallucinations. Hallucinations are random. So that's the first thing. If they're running patterns, they're not hallucinations. Second thing is psychology and psychiatry and the medical establishment have done no research whatsoever on the voices. None. Right. They've just arrogantly, you know, kind of reminds me of the old Egyptian priests. They just come up and go, well, they're hallucinations because we said so. They haven't done one iota of research into it at all. Matter of fact, when I was asking questions about the voices, I got stopped over the period of, well, when I first started off at the state hospital, I got called up before 2 psychiatrists and 1 medical director for asking questions about the voices. And I was told, you won't do that. You know, these are hallucinations. And if you ask questions about them, you're just reinforcing the hallucinations and making them stronger. Right. That's not what I saw. You know, now they did get upset when I did ask questions about it. The voices don't want people probing into that. They don't want people understanding that they are not hallucinations. They run fixed patterns. It's almost like they're all cut in the same cookie cutter. You know, the voices that I dealt with at the state hospital in Milledgeville, Georgia, were saying the same things to those patients there as they were saying here in Arizona. You know,
so what were some of those? What were some of those for? Because I know people listening have someone in their family.
The things that the voices tell them.
That you were saying, like what was happening here in Georgia, what was also happening in Arizona. Like, what are a few examples where people?
Well, the examples are they're telling these people the same things.
Right.
You know, so it's like you're no good, you're evil, you're ugly, nobody likes you. They're just faking like they like you. People are talking behind your back. You're stupid. You're ugly. You'll never succeed at any, that kind of stuff. It's just negative. And that's the first pattern I saw, that the voices were consistently negative, you know. And then the question you have to ask when you see that is, what holds them to such a negative pattern? Why aren't they random like all other hallucinations? And then other patterns started popping up. You know, which means that something is holding them on those patterns. They're not random.
Yep. Absolutely. And the reason why I wanted to start that is because I know you've talked about that before, of like, it starts with these, you're not good enough, this and that. And my producer who you spoke to, Anchor, we were talking about this in a pre-show, basically, because a lot of people were excited to have this conversation we're having and listen. And one of the things we brought up is that, I was thinking is that, is there layers to these voices that a lot of us experience? And,
Yeah, there are.
because ultimately one thing that I was thinking about is you very much are working with, the most, like, quote unquote psychotic, mentally, deranged, or most possessed in some ways people. But there's layers to it where I just was thinking, like, how many people do hear those voices in their head of, I'm not good enough, you're not worthy, you're ugly, and they're just your everyday person, quote unquote. And it's also, you know what I mean? So there's layers to this, is there not?
Yeah, sure. Everybody hears them. Now, the thing is that we're taught from the time we're little that every thought you have in your head belongs to you. That is far, far from truth. These voices don't come from you. You don't, the human being doesn't turn on itself. The human spirit does not turn on itself. Something else is turning on you. But the thing is, it sounds just like your own thoughts. The thousands of thoughts you have run through your head every day sounds just like them. Only the intention is different. Every negative thought about yourself or somebody else comes from the dark side. Now, the third way to identify them, and this is one of the ways that, you have to start there. Realize that they're not you. They don't belong to you. They don't come from you.
Mm-hmm.
They're against you.
Yeah.
And the third way to identify them is by their intent. Their intent is always negative. It's malicious. It's not in your best interest. So if you hear a voice telling you to do something, you go, a lot of people are like, I'm not going to do that. That's not their intent.
Right.
So those three things have to be taken into account for the first step to recovery, is to realize that not all the thoughts that come into your head belong to you. And this happens to everybody. And like you said, there are layers. There was one day, I don't know, maybe last year, I remember I was out in the backyard out here in Arizona. A lot of people don't have lawns. You go out there with a machete and cut down the cactus. So I had the machete in hand. I'm cutting cactus, and I have a beautiful white husky. And she runs by. She wasn't irritating me or nothing. And here comes this thought booming through my head: cut her head off. And I'm like horrified. It's like, what? Yep. That's not me. And people, they experience that all the time. They drive your car into oncoming traffic, or jump off the bridge, or, I don't know how many people standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon hear a voice that, hey, jump. I know a preacher who heard that once.
Yep.
Those are not your thoughts. They don't belong to you. And your reaction to them shows that. I mean, sends chills up your spine. I'd never do that. I'm not going to do that. Where'd that come from?
Exactly.
They hit us all.
And this is the reason why I'm so glad you brought that up, because anyone listening, whether you have someone in your family that's considered clinically, quote unquote, schizophrenic and this and that, every single one of us has gone through that experience of those thoughts that go, whoa, I cannot believe that I thought that. And as you're saying, it's not you. Because what is interesting is when people think that, and then they go to the system and it's going, man, I've had these like weird random thoughts, and it's going, and to some degree it is. I'm not saying it's not. They're going, oh, it's the TV you're watching, it's the music you're listening to. And yes, that does feed certain energies and certain forces.
You hit it right on the head when you said energy. Thoughts are energy. Your mind is energy.
Yep.
What you're talking about is the energy universe. In the energy universe, there is no time, there is no space, there is no matter. In your mind, there is no time, space, or matter. 100%. The rules of the energy universe are much different than they are in the physical universe. And what psychiatry and psychology today have really screwed up on is they don't take the spirit into account. And we are spiritual beings. We are spiritual, energetic beings. Now a new therapy has come out, and it's amazing, because a guy who put this together spent his whole life putting it together. He had nothing to do with psychology, counseling, psychiatry, nothing. He was a ship captain. He's a ship captain, but he was a genius. And what he did is he read all this stuff all the time. He's reading, and he's trying to put together how the mind worked. How did it work? And the guy's name was John Mace. And after a lifetime, he finally got it. And he saw that the energy frozen due to trauma is what creates all the problems. So he's got a way with I've been learning it for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or more now, but it's a way to go in there and have the spirit show you where that stuff is, and then bring it up and dissolve the emotional charge with it. And it's all done energetically. You can't get rid of it by pouring drugs on it. It's like getting a magnetic field. The magnetic field is energy, but you can't see it, you can't feel it, you can't smell it, you can't sense it. You get a bottle of iron filings and then it'll appear. Well, it's the same thing with traumas.
Yeah.
You can't see them. They affect your behavior, they affect your thought, they affect your feeling, but you can't see them because they're buried.
Yep.
So what happens when you hit a trauma? The ego grabs it and it says, "Oh, I'll handle this," and it buries it alive. And then you become part of that, and that becomes part of your personality. And that's frozen energy that's stuck in there. It's like a virus in a computer.
Yeah. Jerry, I'm about to blow your mind here because, and the way I say that is because, so just real quick, everyone who listens to my show knows this, my background's in personal training. I'm very much, I've been on my journey too, looking at the body in a whole new way. As you brought something up, as you said, that what we're missing in the establishment is spirit. And this has everything to do with what you're talking about, because I've been on my own path identical to what this John Mace is saying, is that when you're in this mindset where we've lost the spirit, what you've lost ultimately in regards to spirit is breath. Majority of people in my field, in what I've experienced for over 10 years of working with people, is how many people don't know how to breathe. And this is important because when you understand the importance of the breath, filling up the lungs, moving through the heart, and that everything works in oscillations. Everyone who listens to my show already knows about this. Everything moves in an oscillation. The heart is an oscillation. The way the cerebral spinal fluid, everything, if we're moving the way the body's naturally designed, it's creating vortex. It's creating flow. When you create trauma, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, what it does is it creates a tenseness. It creates a tightening motion. And what it's doing literally is it's creating this stagnant water within the body. And when you understand what water really is and really understand the magnitude of this, the stagnation of the blood, the stagnation of the water, the tightening of the body not moving again in its natural design, what it's doing, to your point, is it's now literally creating this holding of trauma. When I've trained people, and I've talked about this so many times, when I train people and I put them in a position and I have them focus on their breath, get into the positions where it's like, oh, my knees had issues for so long, yada, yada, yada. We hold them, we move through it in a way that they feel controlled, everything's moving. I've had more people come out bawling, crying than I've ever experienced. And they go, I don't know why this is happening. And I go, well, what are you thinking about? They go, I went back to the memory of the trauma that occurred. And you asked me to breathe through it. I've never been able to do it because it's now in a physical form. We're literally physically experiencing the release of that stagnation. As you said, that frozen, you've released it. You've created heat literally by movement. You create temperature, and now the memories pour out, the memory that's held in the salt of the water, essentially. And that's why I wanted to talk to you. And you're bringing up all these things that are direct line with what it is that I'm trying to do with people, is going, you can't just tell someone, hey, stop thinking about this, stop this, right? Those voices are dark forces, will get you, right? They're there. But what happens, and at least what I'm experiencing, is when you put people under physical stress, adding back into their life the spirit, the breath, really bringing it back and putting people's attention on that stress and moving through it with control, with purpose, with desire, gratitude, all these things. People, it sounds like what you're saying too, get back of control of that positive gratitude voice of, I can do this. I am worthy. I am grateful. I am appreciative. I'm not just a clump of this, or I'm not just, whatever, a meat puppet. I'm more than that. But anyway, I know I just went, but it's direct in line with everything you're saying.
Well, what May struggled with for years was how to find where those traumas were located, because they're buried.
Yeah.
They come up when, there's a reaction, like somebody you hate. There's a trauma buried there based on those facets of that personality.
Yep.
So he's come up with a way where the spirit can help you locate exactly where that trauma is.
Interesting.
And then we can go in there and we can get rid of it. And I've had so much improvement. I mean, so quickly. I've never seen anything like the MACE energy method. I mean, I've it's 4 years of undergraduate and 4 years of graduate school. They don't have anything that can even touch this.
Wow. Is he still alive?
It goes in there so quick and so fast. And it just, within an hour, you can have the biggest trauma resolved most of the time.
Wow. Is he still alive?
No, he's dead, but two of his associates are still alive, and I'm in close contact with them. So I'm constantly asking them questions as far as my personal practice that I treat patients. When I run into something I don't understand, I'll hit them. And but there's a lot of people starting to recover. Got 2 people now that fully recovered from schizophrenia.
Wow.
And in the prison, I got in trouble for that. I was put under investigation because these people were recovering. And that shouldn't happen according to psychiatry. It's a lifetime sentence.
Right.
So here's these prisoners, they're dumping drugs into them. And this is before I knew the MACE, the MACE stuff. We're doing it kind of the hard way. And it took a lot longer, maybe 3 to 6 months in a lot of cases, maybe sometimes longer. But I had the time there, and they'd recover. And I remember one guy, he recovered and he went off his meds, and they noticed it, and that was very suspicious to him. And he said, "Well, what happened?" And he said, "Well, I've been working with Jerry, and I don't need the meds anymore." So the chief psychologist goes, "Well, this shouldn't happen," and he started sending all these stooges down to try to, "What are you doing in there?" Of course, I couldn't tell him. Right. I'm just talking to him. So they started cornering the inmates, and they wouldn't tell him either. So there was one guy who he fully recovered, and he had a valid MMPI at the time he came into the prison. So the chief psychologist saw that, and he goes, he sent down his stooge to investigate, and the prisoners, and he asked the prisoner, what are you doing in there? The prisoner knew what he was up to. And he said, "He's helping us, not like you, asshole." And boy, that set him off. So he said, "Okay, will you take another MMPI?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, I will." So he ran him through it. Both profiles were valid. The first one showed he was psychotic as bedbug. The second one showed no psychotic features whatsoever. So that really torqued him off. I thought they'd be happy about that because they're spending a lot of money on those antipsychotic drugs.
Yep.
And they're not doing anything except rotting out the patient's brain.
Yep.
That's another thing that the psychiatric mafia doesn't want you to know, that with long-term use, those drugs shrink your brain like a walnut. They cause severe psychological, neurological damage.
Yep.
And when they discovered that, the psychiatric mafia went, "Oh no, it's not our drugs, it's a schizophrenia doing that." And here they were finding them in autopsies, like state hospital patients or patients who've been on those drugs for years. They all had shrunken brains. And when they brought that up, the big pharma and the psychiatric mafia went nuts. Like, "Oh no, it's not that, it's a schizophrenia." So some of the other more honest researchers started feeding those drugs to rats and monkeys.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened. Right. And then they try to bring that up, they washed it away. I've never seen a psychiatrist tell anybody how dangerous these drugs were. They'll say, "Oh yeah, your vision will get blurred, your tongue might get thick, you're going to feel groggy for a while, it'll adjust in a couple of weeks, and you'll be okay."
Yep, 100%. And this is, like I said, I've had MDs on that have dealt with patients in regards to quote unquote disease and things like that. And they have done the same thing in regards to creating a different approach to actually curing And when I say cure, it's letting the person who's going through the experience let their body do what it needs to do in order to heal appropriately. Let the body do what it's already perfectly designed to do, and getting out of the way. And I've had a lot of people like yourself in different fields, but similarly helping others. Same thing, same story. Hey, we didn't have to use these drugs, guys. We're helping, we're saving these people. We're actually doing it. No, 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 no. Come here. You don't do that. And same thing. I've had people that I've had on my show, doctors who have literally been on the most wanted list in regards to had to move out of the country purely because they saw some embezzlements and nefarious actions happening within the medical system, and the banks brought it to some attention, and they were like, "You need to get out of the States. You're not wanted here." And it was purely going, no one's dying in my practice. Everyone's feeling better. And I'm drawing attention to something that's nefarious. And you're living those things, as you said yourself, where you're like, you're getting investigated. You have people breathing down your neck. You have possibly threats happening. I can imagine, all for what? Helping people get better and letting them heal. And that's where I see and I can experience it, similarly, but not to the same extent. This mindset of going, I can't trust anything any of you say other than that what you are saying is not in the best intention and heart, in the best heart space for those people, whether you realize that or not.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head when you're talking about trauma, because you talk to these schizophrenics and it's trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. And that's what causes schizophrenia. Those traumas. Right. I mean, when I was working in the prison, when I'd see something, a criminally insane guy come in, and I go, oh man, what he did was terrible. And I'd go check his records, and it was just god awful. And then you look into how he was treated as a child. Mm-hmm. He was tortured. They were burnt. They were beaten. They were starved. They were locked in dark rooms. So, all that kind of stuff. And then you think about what the war does to people. I mean, massive trauma with wars. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with, like you said, the energy. So energy for the most part is pure. You look at a magnetic field, it's pure. There's no pollution to it. Gravity, it's pure. Electricity is pure. The human spirit is pure. Your energetic being is pure. All this other crap, the upsets are due to traumas. Mm-hmm. So it's critical to know how to get in there, find that trauma, and release it to help the person out.
So with these traumas and kind of freezing people in space, I guess from your opinion, does that, and how does that create an opening for these entities like that, or these dark forces? Like, what's the relationship?
One thing I noticed when I was working at the state prison, I didn't know what caused it for more than 7 years while working there. I didn't know what caused it, but I noticed a 1-to-1 correlation between the voices attacking these patients and their energy level dropping down to zero. I mean, they couldn't even get out of bed in the morning, and all they were doing was laying and tossing and turning all night with hearing the voices attacking them. And for years, I thought, probably much more than a decade, probably close to 2 decades, I thought, well, that's because the voices are so horrible. They're telling them you're no good, you're rotten, nobody likes you, you're just a waste. Why don't you just go ahead and kill yourself? I mean, battering 24 hours a day. This is what they're putting up with. So I just assumed, which wasn't good, but it's the only thing that made sense to me, was that, that's why their energy level's down. If you were hearing that all the time, it'd be like, it'd be like a burden. But there was one day where they always put me over the toughest units. So I had one medium custody unit, and they put me also over the jail for the entire prison, which were the worst of the worst went to the jail. Okay. So there was one day I came to my office, and here was an inmate kite from a prisoner who was in that jail with a floridly psychotic cellmate. And the cellmate was walking back and forth. He didn't sleep. He's pacing the floor. He's talking to who knows what. And he's standing over this other prisoner at 3 a.m, just staring at him, just in the dark, just staring at him. And that prisoner was getting spooked. So I read that, and then in comes a call from the captain of that unit. And he said, you got to come over here because, there's problems in that cell. You need to do something with the crazy guy who's pacing and staring and freaking out this other guy. So I checked out both of them. And the other inmate in that cell was in there for protective custody. He had snitched off a drug deal with the Aryan Brotherhood. They'd already stabbed him once. They were sending letters under his door saying, as soon as we get it, we're here. We're here. We're waiting for you. As soon as we get a chance, you're done. You're dead. So they got into trouble to get into the jail so they could get at this guy. They were really pissed at him because the prison administrators took that entire gang and they shipped it all over the state. They broke it up. They took all their drugs, this big drug deal that had gone down, and they wanted that guy dead. So here he was locked in here with the gangsters or in that same cell block, throwing notes under his door saying, you're done. Soon, first chance we get, we're going to get you. And here he is locked in with the psychotic prisoner. You couldn't be under much more stress unless you were in war. So, and it was a perfect experimental situation. They were both under the same circumstances. They were being fed the same food with the same staff in the same situation. Everything was neutralized as far as outside interference. It was a perfect experimental situation. So I called the guy out who was the guy who wrote. He wrote to me and said, please come and do something. I can't stand this. I can't deal with this. And I watched as he come out of his cell, and he had plenty of energy. He bounded up the stairs. He didn't have to use the guardrails. He moved along at a brisk pace. He sat down. He had, his speech was normal. Of course, he was anxious, but he didn't lack any energy. I mean, he was nervous. He was afraid, but his energy wasn't lacking. So I listened to his story and let him go. And then I called in his cellmate, the floridly psychotic prisoner, and watched as he come up the steps. And he just drug himself up the steps. He's using the handrail. He kind of shuffled along as he moved toward the interview room. He sat down. He kind of slumped in the chair. He didn't have any energy. His speech was slow. He was like, shot. I mean, he was just shot. He didn't have any energy. So I asked him, you hearing voices? He goes, yeah, I'm being attacked by dozens of them. I mean, all the time. It's just like, it's 24 hours a day. So he wasn't on any medications. So I had to arrange for psychiatry to come and see him. But after I left that day, it's like, I remember walking out of that building and going, it's not the anxiety. It's not, there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
And I saw there was a one-to-one correspondence, and I'm thinking, are the voices taking this energy from them? So that was the new theory that was starting to emerge. And I was always reading other stuff, from shamans and Carlos Castaneda and that whole genre of people who were working at a different psychological level. And Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The Four Agreements and The Voice of Knowledge, before I ever get to that point, I hit a place where he was talking about these entities being parasites, energetic parasites. And I brought that book in to one of the prisoners I was working with. But first I had some warnings from him. So what I was doing before I brought that book in and asked him about what Miguel Ruiz was saying, he first warned me several weeks prior to that. He's leaving. After we got done our session, we were working on breaking up the patterns that the voices were running. He turns around and he's leaving, and he turns around and he says, what you're doing is dangerous, don't you? And I look up and I'm like, does not compute. I'm thinking, and then he turns around and he walks off. That's all he said. And I'm just sitting there thinking about, what does that mean? And I didn't pay any attention to it. I'm kind of thinking, well, the voices are in his head. They can't come out. He's stuck with them, not me. And, I remembered it. I mean, I logged it in, but I didn't pay it a great deal of attention. It was just there. It was like a data point. So I kept working with this guy, and it was like maybe a month later, he comes back without an appointment, and he knocks on my door in the psych department. And I had to deal with these guys. If they ever really needed to see me, what they can do is kind of throw pebbles at my window, so I was picking people who would tell me about their voices. Those are the ones I was working with the most intensely, and I always had a group of 10 to 15 of them that would tell me in real time what their voices were saying.
Right. It just goes to show you real quick that they wanted someone to ask them about their voices.
Right.
They were just begging somebody to finally look at them as a real living being and saying, I'm willing to hear you. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. And it is. It's like, they're isolated. Nobody listens to them because, the psychiatric mafia, big pharma, the medical establishment's all going, yeah, these are hallucinations without any research whatsoever. None. Mm-hmm. They just made it up.
Yeah.
So these guys are dying to be listened to, but what they tell you is kind of stranger than fiction. It's like, this is another world they're experiencing there, but they're all experiencing the same real other world. So there's rules to it. There's patterns to it. I didn't know all the rules, and I was always tripping over the, what it was like. I opened this door and walked into this other reality, and I didn't know what the rules were. I had no roadmap. I didn't know what to do. So I was constantly tripping over things and setting off, reactions. Now, that would have been a problem at the state hospital because there was like an unwritten law. You don't upset a schizophrenic prisoner because you don't know what he's going to do. And schizophrenics were attacking psychiatrists at a rate, more than twice as high as regular doctors or nurses or psychologists or counselors. It was the psychiatrists that were getting attacked by schizophrenics. And I couldn't figure that out because they weren't spending any more than 20 minutes a month with these guys. And they were being attacked at a rate, at least double what anybody else was being attacked. And it was equal to the attendants who were spending 24 hours a day with them. And I'm for years, I was going, what are these guys doing to set these guys off in 20 minutes?
And what did you come up with?
Well, what it was is the voices don't like the medicines. The medicines are major tranquilizers. They calm them down. The voices don't want them calmed down. They want them upset. They want that negative emotional energy flowing.
So they know they're coming in to basically do exactly that, being like, I know they're kind of coming just to give me medicine. We're not doing that today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And well, I'm going to lose track of the thing here. So, okay, remind me. It was after 7 years that I figured that one out. But remind me to tell you about it. I'll get back on this other one because I got so many stories that they just kind of go like that. They're all over the place.
You're gonna be the most popular show because so many people are not only fascinated by this, but have so many of their own experiences or family. So I'm dialed in right now. I'm here with you. So I'll remember everything.
Right, remind me of that. So I'm going to go back to the other one. So this guy, he comes in first. He says, what you're doing is dangerous. Doesn't compute. I remembered it. Then he comes to my door and he knocks on my door one day and he goes, the voices want to talk to you. And I'm like, what? And that had never happened before. It was always through the patient. The patient would tell me, well, the voices are telling me you're a jerk, you're a fool, you don't listen to you, you're crazy. Da, da, da. So it would always be through the patient as, the translator of what the voices were saying. So they, and they, the deal was they tell me in real time what the voices are saying. And that got hairy sometime because every once in a while one would come in and go, and the voices are telling me to stab this guard. And I'm like, because then I was at a dilemma. If I went and snitched them off and they locked that guy up, that would spread to the rest of them and I'd be shut out. That would be it.
You
None of
lost
them would tell
trust.
me anything after that anymore.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was increase the amount of time I spent with that particular guy and monitor him very closely
Yeah.
until I felt that he was safe to let go.
And and just real quick on that, when you would do that, people with that voice telling them to do that thing would subside to some level, and then obviously, for the most part, hopefully nothing happened from that. Like there was no action that took place.
No, there was no action, because then I'd start working with the guy, about what did he tell you? What do you do about it? Like, you want to spend another 10 years in prison, go ahead and do something. Is it worth it? Because this guy,
Right.
But with
you
prisoners, when a guard disrespects them, that is not a good thing. No, that's not a good thing. They're asking for trouble.
Right.
So they know, they have a sense of fairness, and they know sometime if they get out of line, they're going to be treated badly. But this guy just kind of went out of his way to kind of insult this other prisoner. So I think we headed off a lot more trouble than we prevented a lot of problems that way.
So you said the guy said the voices want to talk to you.
The voices want to talk to me. Okay, so I'm kind of taken aback. It was a strange request. And I said, okay, come on in, have a seat. Closed the door, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, well, what do they have to say? And he looks at me, and his voice changes a little bit. It got a little deeper, and it said, you have no right to interfere with our way of life. And it sent chills up my back. I mean, I'm like in the Twilight Zone. I'm getting chills just talking about it again. I can remember that clear as day, like it happened yesterday. And I'm like, boom, my head just went, because I was denying this. I didn't want to think that these things were entities or demons or whatever. I was still, my denial system was in shambles. It was still standing somehow, but it was in shambles, because all this evidence was coming into the contrary, that these things were not hallucinations, that these things were not some figment of the subconscious, that these things were conscious entities that could think and they could direct things. And as that evidence built, my denial system got shakier and shakier. And when that guy said that, it just collapsed. I just went boom. It was like I just stared at him, and he saw me staring at him, and he said, that wasn't me. And I said, you're screwing with me. And he goes, no, I'm not screwing with you. He said, that's what they said. That wasn't me. That was them. And, he was honest. And I'm like, so they are real. They are real. They are entities. They are separate from these people. And I closed my office and sat there staring out the window for the rest of the day. I couldn't function.
Dude,
it was like boom.
And this is the thing about what you just said there, is that when you take, and this is the highest level of, like, as you said, like the most, let's just say, quote unquote, psychotic patients, and you experience that, the amount of people, even at any of this range, when all they're trying to do is actually have somebody listen to them and feel heard.
Yeah.
It shows you the power of being connected with someone else and saying, I'm present with you and I'm truly, genuinely listening.
That's very important. And that's another facet of the recovery, because what the voices get these people to do is isolate themselves in the room, away from their family. They tell their family that you're the enemy, stay away from them. All they're going to do is mess with you. And they lock themselves in their rooms, and they sit there and just listen to the voices all day. That's a very worst thing that they could be doing.
Totally.
They're just growing stronger. So if the patient tells their family what the voices are saying, the voices hate that. They absolutely hate that. But to continue this story, okay, so I'm blown away.
Right.
But I don't stop working with this guy because he's making good progress.
Totally.
So he comes in one day, and this is when I bring in the Miguel Ruiz book, because I hit a section there in the Voice of Knowledge where he's talking about these energetic parasites, and I'm going, that pretty much matches what I'm seeing with these psychotic patients, these psychotic prisoners. So I bring that book into the prison, and I call this guy in. And I did that all the time. I said, what do you think of this? How does this work?
Right.
What do you,
as a question.
it's like, getting their opinions on stuff
Boom.
all the time, you know? So I bring that in. I said, I'd like your opinion on this. And I start reading it to him. And it gets to the part where it starts talking about these entities as parasitic, energetic entities. And he just freezes up and he goes into this bizarre stare. You know, he's just staring at me like his eyes are wide open and it's like just staring. And he's like frozen. And it's not natural, you know, and I'm like looking at him and I said, what do you think? And then this electrical crackling erupts behind my head. It's like sounded just like a arc welder. It was that loud. It was like crack, 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 crack. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at this thing. And then it starts moving up the wall on my right-hand side, up the office wall. And I'm like, what is going on? It's like Outer Limits. It's like do, 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 do. And I couldn't see anything. I couldn't smell anything, but it was loud. It was like crack, 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 all the way up the wall. And I'm looking at him and he's sitting there with that bizarre look on his face. And I'm going, he's going to attack. So I take my chair and I push it back against the wall and I get ready to kick him if he comes at me, because all they have in the medical, they always put female guards in the medical unit. You get attacked by a psychotic prisoner, they're not going to be a lot of use. And by the time they get somebody there, you know, it's going to be all over by that time, one way or another.
Right.
So I'm push my chair back and I'm getting ready to have to fight this guy. And he's just staring at me with this bizarre stare. And this crackle keeps moving up the wall. Crack, 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 crack. And it gets up to the ceiling. And then it starts cutting across the top of the office where I can see him and where the noise was coming from at the same time. I can't see anything. I can't smell anything. There's no other. I can hear it. And it sounds just like electricity, but it crosses the entire office. And then it starts coming down the left wall back toward me. And I'm near the left wall. And it jumps into this Rubbermaid trash can near my left leg. And I look down in there and there's nothing there. The inmate porter had cleaned it the night before. It was just a plastic bag. There's nothing there. Right. And it's like, 2 feet from where my head is, and like looking down at it. Nothing, just that crackling noise, and I'm trying to keep my attention on him and the crackling noise at the same time. And then it just stops. It just goes dead. And I'm like in shock. And I look at him and I asked him, did you hear that? He says nothing. He just gets up and he goes, I gotta leave. And he gets up real slow and he starts shuffling out the door. And I'm like, get out of here. Go, go, go.
Wow.
And he disappears down the hall, and I'm in, Outer Limits time. This is like, what is going on here? And it wasn't like a short thing, like you could have explained it away. There was no explaining it away. It went on for 25 or 30 seconds. There was no explaining it away, and it was loud. I didn't get any verification from him. He just gets up and he shuffles out of the office and disappears. Yeah. And I'm like, I went and I'm checking the walls to see if they're burnt. I'm smelling the walls to see if there's any smell to. No, nothing. So I go, well, maybe something happened outside. So I went out into the hall. No, the doctors weren't in yet. The nurses weren't in yet. I was the only one in that hallway. There was no explanation for this.
The only explanation.
And again, here's another shock. I mean, it closed the office again. I was down. It was like, and there was nobody I could talk to about this.
Yeah.
I couldn't say, oh, this, tell one of the other psychs, hey man, I was working with this schizophrenic and the freaking office started crackling like electricity. I had to keep it to myself. Yep. I couldn't tell my wife because she didn't like me poking in the heads of psychotics anyway. Right. So I couldn't tell her these kind of stories. So I was stuck with it. There was nobody I could talk to. I was just like them.
Mm-hmm.
The only people who really understood what I was experiencing were the schizophrenics. I could talk to them. And but I couldn't talk to anybody else.
Oh, you saw the electricity? Nice, dude. They're sitting there and this is, my mind is blown, but I'm not even surprised. But what's so fascinating about what you were just saying was that when you brought it in as a question and you brought it in as asking for their opinion, in that one specifically, that example you gave, and you said yourself, you experienced that shift happen. It's when you realize that people, us, have these openings for things to come in or that are already there to present themselves. Multiple personality disorder, all these things where, we go through all these different things, and you realize is that we're not just this physical body. This is more than it. There is that etheric body, that water body that we talk about water again. And as you know, like when you're talking, and then something immediately I thought of was you're talking about electricity, right? That you hear that pop, 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 this electrical, like it's electricity, right? It's understanding that, like, what makes a battery create charge? You need a solution. You need some sort of solution.
You need to put energy into it to get energy out of it.
Exactly. And it's realizing that this other realm that's going with us, I'm under the full belief from all my studies and all the people I've talked to, that other world you're talking about with these demonic, it's in that etheric, because it's dealing with this, again, you're dealing with the power of like water and all these things that if there's a lack of flow, there's a lack of charge, something's going to come in and create that energy, like you said. And one thing that I want to run by you and get your opinion on, because for me, what I think of is, how you keep saying everybody's so drained. Everybody's just so drained when they hear the voices, right? Well, this is just how my brain works. What's happening, right? On this other level, there's things coming in that we in the physical can't comprehend. We don't realize. We just assume all crazy. But what, as you said, that people do, they go in their room and they sit and just let the voices fester. Is that correct so far?
Well, that's what they do. But if you look at the patterns that I sent you, they're the very same patterns that the deep state mainstream media are hitting us with right now. It's the same exact ones. It's the same exact patterns. They're demonic patterns.
And this is why I wanted to bring that up, because think about what our lifestyle is now. It's a sedentary lifestyle where people are told to sit in front of your TVs, your computers, your phones, take in all of this fear. But as we said, what does this fear and anxieties do? As you said, it creates this exhaustion. But what's happening? It creates a fight or flight, right? We always hear about fight or flight, but what's the piece that they never really talk about? And I know this from my world of working as a trainer. You have to do a little more research to find it, but now it's more a little mainstream. Is there's fight, flight, or freeze. What happens in a freeze state? Like animals, there's this freezing motion. It's this tension. The adrenal glands, that sympathetic nervous system is shot, because most people are living in a sympathetic state of this constant freeze. Even though they're moving, everything is here energetically.
Yeah, look at the fear they're generating, massive amounts of fear.
And think about what that's doing, though, as we're talking here. When you're releasing that energy and someone's not in motion, they're not breathing, they're just staying stagnant in this, like this tension. I'm under the impression, and you know way more than I do, but could it be that that's then literally purposely, in my opinion, with the mainstream and these cabals?
Yeah.
It's knowing when we get you in that state and you're not moving, you're not breathing, you're not finding gratitude, you're in fear, all those voices coming in. Why are we seeing more people on antidepressants? Why are we seeing more people on prescription drugs to try to calm anxieties, depressions, things like that? Like we said, there's layers.
And the suicide rate is up. None of those medicines are doing anything for mental health. We've got more murders. We got more psychosis. We got more mental health problems than we ever have. And here they are dousing us with tons of these drugs. They're even dousing, I don't know, they got, tens of thousands of little kids on these antipsychotic drugs. I mean, they're destroying the little kids.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm surprised somebody isn't suing the crap out of these people. If they had the evidence, but for the most part, the process of rotting out the brain it's very slow.
Right. And that's where most these places go, and I know a lot of people in the medical field, they go, well, where's the study for it? And it's like, oh, you can't prove that. There's not enough long-term evidence. And then what a lot of people say is, well, with long-term evidence, there's so many other factors that could have gotten in the way. So you really don't know if it's this thing that's causing it. So you realize what people are doing is going, I can't admit to that. Maybe these things are really bad. So I need to just keep following what I've been told in regards to how studies work. Well, if there's no study, then there's really no proof of it. Well, if the studies, like I said, the long term, then there's so many other factors that could be causing that. It's not just that. And it's going, yeah, but those drugs literal just drugs are playing a massive role into it, on top of all those other things. So it's so fascinating. But I want to see,
it's
if
like
you want
driving
to
with your brakes on,
Mhm.
and then pouring water on the brakes to cool them down.
Exactly. Right. Nothing's happening. So
Nothing's happening.
I want to go back, if it's cool with you. You said you had that other story. You said to remind you that you had another
Oh,
story.
I didn't finish this one yet.
Oh, there's more. Okay,
Okay.
sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So, okay. I didn't want to see that guy after that.
Yeah.
It took me, I think it was about 3 months, if I remember correctly, before I worked up the nerve to call this guy back.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want, I only going to call him back after that. So about 3 months later, I finally worked up the nerve, called him back. He comes in, and I was expecting him to be a wreck. If the voices could do that, and they were strong enough to create that in my office, then they were strong enough to be destroying him. And the guards bring him down. He comes in, he looks good, and I'm surprised, I'm shocked. And he's back to his normal self again. And we did a little bit of small talk, and then finally he sits down. And I said, at first I mentioned to him, you look good. I wasn't expecting that after what I experienced in here last time. And he goes, yeah, I've been doing what you told me. I haven't got rid of them, but I'm keeping them down. I have them under control. And I said, do you remember when you were back here? And did you hear that crackling sound right before you left? And he goes, yeah, I heard it. He said, but I'm surprised you did. Meaning me. And I'm going, yeah, I heard it. I said, what in the blazes was that? And he said, that was them. I said, the voices? And he said, yeah, those were the voices. And I said, what in the blazes were they trying to do? And he said, they were trying to scare you off. And I said, well, they did a damn good job of it.
Jeez, dude.
And, so we talked a little bit, and he was back to where he was before. I mean, he didn't spook me out anymore. I don't remember if I kept working with him or not after that. I really don't. But I asked him before he left, I said, you looked like a zombie when you left my office that day. I said, what were the voices telling you as you left? And he said, they were telling me to go get a shank and stick it in your gut. And I'm thinking, oh, he wouldn't do that. I've been working with this guy for 6 months. He's much better than he was. He wouldn't do something like that. And I asked him, I said, well, why didn't you do it? And he said, I couldn't find one.
Oh my
gosh.
And
I'm like, oh, what am I messing with here? Dude. I don't remember if I kept working with him or not. I don't remember. It's blotted out of my mind. Past that point, everything's gone. I don't remember anything of what happened with him.
Oh my dude, my heart just stopped for a second. That is so, dude. And this is the thing that I want to give you credit for. And for those listening, I know they're thinking probably the same thing as I am to some extent at this point. The fact I'm grateful that you're taking it upon yourself, your curiosity, you're wanting to know the truth, the straight and narrow path of truth, and doing what you went into the field that you did to really help these people and put yourself, not, again, unbeknownst to you, how severe this is going down this path, but willing to do that for the genuine well-being of other people. I admire you so much for that, because I know as people are going to listen to this, just like me, they're going to go, what the, what bleep? And quite frankly, I can't even imagine. I can only experience through your story, and for you to take those, those licks and to be in those situations, and then whether or not you worked with him, but to keep going because you genuinely want to know that, hey, something else is happening here. As you said, my belief system, what I thought I knew, is in shambles at this point. All I can do, therefore, is really try to understand and understand what is going on so you can be of service to others to help them on their journey. So for that, I applaud you. And I can't say it enough, but yeah, that I can't even imagine that, man. So
well, thank you. I suspect I was drunk when I signed up for this.
Yeah, but
it's like,
so is there any more that happened?
And I was sick of working with schizophrenics when I got out of the state hospital. It's like, okay, I'm done with these people. I'm finally getting out of here. I'm going back to school again. And got into the PhD program, and they didn't know anything. They didn't know anything. And it was like, what am I?
And you realize you're you're kind of in many ways a trailblazer to rediscovering what has already been known in the past. And this is what's fascinating, kind of bringing it back to the system that we're in, that is run by these dark forces. Without question, you can't, at this point, with what I know and what I've learned, there's no debate in my mind that it is run by them, because what they're doing is they're taking these forces and they're showing it in the entertainment. They're showing it in the music. They're subliminally put it in there and going, we're going to make you believe it's all just made up, but we're going to keep feeding you this. So you have it in your mind. It's never going to go away. So even though you might not see it as real, you're going to feel it as real, and it's going to be there present. And you're going to have to try to tell yourself, no, that's not real. It has to be something else, because I've been told this is just made up stuff. This isn't real stuff. Oh, these voices. And then it's going, your body's literally going, you're under attack. Something's in your system. It is them. They're here.
And nobody's believing you.
Right. And no one's believing that voice. You're not believing the voice in your head. Your godly voice, that spirit, that is you, that is,
it's overwhelmed.
Is overwhelmed, going like, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to give you signals to let you know something's going on. Drugs.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's just going it's just never.
Their drugs are a joke. It's like all they're doing is turning these people into zombies. They're narcissizing them, and it's like these are energetic entities. They're energy. It's like trying to get a strong magnet, and you get a bottle of Thorazine or antipsychotic, and you pour it on the magnet, and say, oh yeah, well it's interfering with the magnetic field, and if it doesn't interfere enough, we'll pour more on it. You can't fight a energetic problem with a physical solution.
And I always,
and that's where the Mace energy method thing comes in. And the book that's written by John Mace, it's called what was it? Energy Over Mind.
I'm going to read that book.
He comes up with a whole different explanation for how the mind works. And what's good about it is, and I'm using it in my clinical practice every day, it works. That's the proof in the pudding. It works. None of these other crappy things that they're teaching in counseling or psychology or, I've been through all the levels of I've been undergraduate, master's degree, PhD. They don't have any answers. They have no answers. It's just all this psychobabble and bullcrap, but nothing is cured. You talk about, they talk about the problem over and over and over again, which in a lot of cases, it just makes it worse. It doesn't discharge that locked energy. It doesn't do anything.
Right.
Finally, you got somebody listening to you, and you're paying them for it, but it doesn't solve your problems. Mm-hmm. You go right back to feeling the same way you felt when you were in there.
Right.
But real quick, I want to go through just mention these patterns. I'm not going to go into them in any detail.
Yeah, let's do it.
Those of you who are listening, you have schizophrenics in your family, or if you're a counselor or a psych nurse, you can see these for yourself. It doesn't take a genius. All you got to do is open your eyes. These voices are negative. They're anti-religious. They respond negatively to the person going to church, reading the Bible. Why would a hallucination do that? They foster and create negative emotion. They don't create positive emotion. They energetically drain their victim. They get louder after sunset, and they're loudest between 3 and 4 in the morning. They get louder when they're ignored. And I've seen psychiatrist after psychiatrist tell these patients, they're just hallucinations, just ignore them. No. I remember pulling one patient back, a week later after a psychologist told him that at the state hospital. And I said, well, how's that going? And he goes, it ain't going well at all. It doesn't work. So then I started asking all the other ones. So I had a never-ending source of schizophrenics, which is something I never saw any researcher in any of the institutions I worked with. They won't let them in there. You've got to have a advanced degree just to get access to these people. They've sealed it off. It's like that's their domain. You can't walk into a psych hospital and say, hey, I'd like to speak to some of your patients. Oh, no, you're not going to do that. Or go into the prison and go, hey, I want to talk to some of your criminally insane. No. They won't let you have access.
Right. And real quick, just something, what does that higher degree mean? higher within the system that is perpetuating this demonic entities, these demonic forces. The further you go up, the more you play ball. You know what I'm saying? It's going.
Yeah, well,
That's what this title.
You got to play ball to a certain degree to get access.
That's my point. Is that it's going. If you get to that point, for most people, it's going. I've been already programmed and meant to believe everything that I'm being told. So I can't.
And that's one of the things I saw at the state hospital. I'm like, well, what are the voices telling these people? And nobody was interested at all. They all believed. I mean, and there were probably 1,000 staff there. They all believed they were hallucinations because they went through that programming by the ivory tower. Well, that's what they are. I mean, why would they tell us they weren't? They were hallucinations if they weren't. But nobody was curious.
Yep. Nobody. Why would they lie?
Why would they lie? You know, and it's like, yeah, exactly. And,
Sit down. I'd
ask them, you know, why. I'd start asking them, and nobody else would.
Yep. So let's go back to your list. I didn't mean to cut you off too much.
They get louder when they're ignored. They foster self-destructive behavior. So I saw clearly that these voices were directing them to sabotage themselves, to get in trouble, to get thrown out of classes, to get in fights with other people. I mean, and then when I talked to him about it, oh yeah, the voices were telling me he was doing this, or laughing behind my back, or he's talking about me behind my back, that kind of stuff. They foster isolation, which is what the worst possible thing you could do to a schizophrenic is isolate them in their room, because then there's nothing interference. So what this is a battle for their attention. It's either they take control of that attention and start moving it off of the voices, or the voices take it and start using it for their purposes to direct them to do stuff that's going to get them in more trouble, to generate more negative emotion, which is what they feed off of. Right?
It goes back to stagnation anyway.
They demand the attention of their victims. You know, you can't ignore them. They're constantly maneuvering for increased control over the victim's behavior. They gaslight the person. They tell them stuff that's not true. You know, like somebody walks by in the street out front, they go, oh yeah, they're watching you. They're trying to get in the window, or a cop car siren goes by and oh, they're looking for you. They're after you. You know, stuff like that. They manipulate perception constantly. Now this one's really strange because they are energetic entities. There is no time, there's no space, there is no matter where they are. You know, they play by a different set of rules. They belong to the energetic universe, not the physical universe where we are. We're like two parts. We got a physical body and we got an energetic being that drives that physical body. So we're between the two worlds, you know, but they don't have any physical anything. So they can go into the victim's mind. They can pull up the most rotten thing you ever did, bring it up through your memory and throw it in your face and say, look what a rotten person you are. Look at what you did. And it doesn't have to be anything big. There was one guy told me he borrowed a dime from somebody 20 years ago and the voices were still blaming him because he didn't pay it back. You know, and it gets so bad where they there's so many degrees of how they torture and torment people by bringing stuff up and gaslighting them. They don't want the victim to tell anybody about their presence. They don't want them talking about it. And unfortunately, the reasons they give are true. So the voices tell them, if you tell people that you're hearing voices, they're going to take off. They're going to think you're weird. They're going to put you on drugs. They're going to take you to a psych hospital and they're going to lock you up. Unfortunately, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know, so those of you parents who have schizophrenic kids, ask them about the voices, talk to them about the voices. The voices hate to be mocked. They hate to be made fun of. They want you to be scared. They want you to take them seriously. So these are all things you can do. For those who have bad voices, you can put a rubber band about your wrist and snap it real hard. Now you can go to my website at jerrymarzinsky.com and we have all this stuff listed. We have all these things that you can do on your own to begin attacking these things. You know, now the psychotherapy where we get in there and start removing the frozen traumas, that's got to be done personally. But all this other stuff you can do by yourself, and it'll take you a long way. So, you know, the snap of a rubber band will shut them up for 15, 20 seconds. They hate the 23rd song. I've had a number of patients tell me that you repeat the 23rd Psalm when the voices are around, and it's like throwing them on a hot frying pan. So what does that tell you? It's like worms thrown on a hot frying pan. That's what they say.
Yep.
The voices are consummate liars. You can't believe anything they say. They lie about everything. You can't make any deal or bargain with them because they won't uphold it.
Right.
They're like bullies that knock they knock a kid down. They just keep kicking them until if the kid doesn't get up and punch him in the face, they're going to just keep kicking them. That's what they're like. They consistently steer the victim away from anything that might generate any kind of joy or peace. They don't want them going to church. They don't want them talking to preachers. They don't want them to have any peace. They can manipulate feeling without even speaking. You can be sitting around and nothing happening, and then all of a sudden you just start feeling awful. Like, what's going on here? They can do that. Mm-hmm. They can short circuit reason because they're very believable. They point to all this stuff that's, here's evidence of this and here's evidence of that. And it seems perfectly reasonable. Like I said, boredom is bad. The very worst thing a schizophrenic can do is be bored. Lock himself in the room and listen to the voices all day. They just get stronger. They try to pass themselves off as thoughts belonging to the person. As long as the person thinks that they're their thoughts, then what are they going to do? Mm-hmm. They are the enemy of themselves. And that's what the voices want you to believe. Once you realize that those thoughts are not yours, that those voices don't belong to you, now you can split yourself off and you got an enemy you can attack. But before that, if you're listening to the psychiatric mafia and big pharma and the regular psychologist, oh yeah, it's your head, it's your mind, it's all screwed up, it's broken, it's a chemical imbalance, which is bull crap. They made that up out of pure garbage. There's selective forgetting going on. They can make, I have to get my patients to write down what I tell them to do, because if they don't, 85% of it will be gone by the time the office visit's gone, or I get done talking to them. They fill your mind with negative thoughts about yourself and everybody else. They destroy your self-concept. They start pulling you into this other reality of theirs. They attempt to pull you away from consensual reality. They use confusion as a means of instilling negative suggestions. So they get you all confused, and then they go, this is the reason. And, confusion is unpleasant. So you jump on that reason and you go, oh, okay, so that's the reason. But it's not the right reason. Mm-hmm. They're averse to anything positive or beautiful. They're energetic parasites.
Yeah.
So if you listen to this and you think about the mainstream media right now, it's the exact same thing.
100%.
They're the exact same patterns on a macroscopic level.
And this is going to show you what you're experiencing with people who are schizophrenic and what's being perpetuated, and also people who, quote unquote, don't have that diagnosis. They're experiencing the same things to some level or another, some degree or another. And how many people nowadays are looking at others because of what's being perpetuated, the lack of, movement in their life, listening to these voices of I'm not good enough, to the point now where people are literally going, I'm thinking the most heinous things towards people that maybe don't have that, see, whatever happened the last 3 years, however people want to view what happened in the last 3 years, is going, I see people with a whole new light, and I see things a little bit darker. And certain people, they show in the news and the media, of going, I wish this on you. I wish this on you. And you're going, what is going on with people? Look at
it. It's all fear. It's turmoil. It's conflict. It's the same stuff that the voices are telling schizophrenics. It's the exact same stuff on a much bigger level. And they have control of the mainstream media, and they have turned it against us.
And here's the thing. And maybe you can agree, would you say that from the last 3 years, I'm not going to get into the details, would you see that what you saw not in your hospitals, but in everyday life, did you see a lot of people showing traits of people who were pure hospitalized schizophrenics, where you're seeing it on the street of going, you have a lot of tendencies that fall right into what I would see in these hospitals?
Well, yeah. The paranoia, the walking around with masks on, keeping the 6 feet distance. They completely made that up. When they were questioned about where'd you get the 6 feet, they go, oh, we just made it up.
They actually got it. They got all that from a 12-year-old girl. I have my buddy who wrote a book. He got exactly where the source was, where the original source was. But as you realize, they said, "Oh, we just kind of made it up." They don't tell you the real story. A 12-year-old girl made it up in a report she did on regards to safety in like one of her and the girl had a relationship to people in that system. So
Oh, for crying out loud!
And this is the thing is it can be traced back without debate. And so it goes to show you exactly what you're saying, but it's also understanding energetically when you keep 6 feet apart, people's biofields, and again, their etheric body is within that 6 feet. This is why warmth, as you said, isolation, huge one.
It's the exact same thing on a macroscopic scale. People need to wake up before it's too late.
Absolutely.
This is a demonic entity that's attacking everybody at this point.
Yeah. So one of the questions I had that someone that wanted to that reached out, they were saying, what can, or rather, does this talk of this for somebody who isn't afflicted, like you and I, who isn't necessarily a schizophrenic, is this damaging, or essentially is this going to create more of a problem if having these conversations? Like, does this, bring
the voices aren't going to like it. The mainstream media isn't going to like it. The psychiatric mafia aren't going to like it. And there's going to be those who go, oh no, I'm going to listen to the psychiatrist. He's the doctor.
Right.
They're not going to like it. Right. And, I have a friend who I could probably help their son, but they don't believe in this stuff. It's like, oh no, we're going to, he's on heavy doses of antipsychotic medications. They're rotting out his brain. There's nothing I can do to help him.
Right.
So the truth is the truth. That's all there is to it.
But
whether it upsets people or not, it doesn't change. The truth doesn't change.
Mm-hmm. But would you say then, essentially, then it's not like, say, just us talking about it, it's not going to be like all of a sudden we're afflicted, as long as we're, again, staying in truth, making sure, like, knowing that, one, this is just an offer. These voices, like, you can choose to be like, with the intention and awareness that this is happening. It's not like, oh, someone's going to all of a sudden be like overtaken. No, if you have good intentions, good heart, like, and healthy, it's okay. Having these conversations is actually beneficial because it's minimizing their power and going, you don't have power over me.
Yeah. And it hopefully it'll get people to pay attention more to their thoughts that come into their heads. And when they start having negative thoughts, to realize that's not them. Mm-hmm. That's not who they are. Their spirit is absolutely pure.
Yeah.
And any negative thought about yourself or anybody else comes in from the dark side. And look at what the mainstream media is saying. Oh, Russia's the enemy. China's the enemy. Everybody's the enemy. We're being attacked from all sides. We got to defend ourselves. And it's insane. It's just totally insane what's going on.
And meanwhile, everyone else is a potential threat. Everyone's a threat. But also you just being here because of your emissions and climate change, you're also just breathing is causing this place to be bad. So you are what's making this place bad.
Yeah, so put the mask on.
Right, and exactly. And it's going, well, what are we talking about? Stop breathing. Stop breathing. It's causing more problems here. So what happens when you stop breathing? You create a stress state. That stress state just drains the adrenal glands. And obviously you're not creating motion. What happens? In my opinion, it sounds like this is what it's happening. It's opening up your body. It's opening up this vessel for all that stuff to come in. And all we need to start doing is just breathing and showing a little more gratitude and start allowing ourselves to know that those aren't our thoughts. That isn't us. It's something else. And knowing, again, you have purpose. You're here for a reason. You are, listen to that kindness in your heart that is there. Try to get through the muck of all those voices, all those, those patterns as you expressed. I do want to go back to the other story you brought up. You told me to remind you back when we were talking earlier, if possible. You were saying, remind me about this one story. You were talking about the jail cellmate, and then you shifted and you said, hold on, I need to go back to this story.
What was it?
Now I forgot. Now we done. You were saying, so you're talking about the cell that you was walking up the stairs. Oh man, I can't remember now. I apologize. I told you I was going to remember, and now I can't remember. But you were, it's okay. You have so many stories.
Well, what did pop into my mind is when I got out of school, and this was at the state hospital, and here they are saying this is a chemical brain imbalance. Okay, so I believed that when I went to the state hospital. When I first started working there, okay, schizophrenia is due to a chemical brain imbalance. And, I was asking the psychiatrist, well, how do you know that? Oh, well, the drug companies do the research on that. We just follow their advice. And I'm like, what are you kidding? The drug companies? That's like turning the fox loose in the hen house. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't too long after that I realized that how, I'm sitting with these psychiatrists when they see these patients and they're ordering medications. Not once did I ever see them order any kind of test to determine what chemicals in the brain were out of order or out of balance, or by how much. And I found that pretty odd. So I went and looked into it, and none exist. They made it up. They made it friggin' up. It was one of the drug companies that came out with Prozac. They knew it was a lie at the time, but they pushed it anyway because it sounds good. Oh yeah, it's a physical brain imbalance. It's a chemical. So we got a physical drug and your brain is made out of chemicals. So our drugs balance those chemicals. There's, I don't know, there's scores of neurotransmitters in the brain. Which ones that are out of balance, but they have no idea what the neurochemical transmitter balance should be. None, zero. Nada. It's just a big lie that they fostered out, and they're still doing it. You look at their drug ads now. Oh yeah, take this antipsychotic drug. It's believed that there's a chemical imbalance in the brain. Believed. Now they're still pushing it after it's been disproven over and over and over and over again. They don't give a crap about people. They want money. That's all they care. Right. They want the money.
And they also, and in my opinion, because a lot of the people, the high ups, are behind the dark forces. I would say I wouldn't want their lives in a million years, because I'm under the impression that their lives is those dark forces, and that's why it's continually pushed, and they sleep at night, and, for whatever the reasons, because when you know that this is what's behind it, man, they get everyone else to believe that you're doing good. This is how this inversion works, and the deceptions and everything else is that of most people, like your friend, it's going, no, I can't comprehend knowing that the decisions I'm making are actually terrible. You're the crazy one. I'm not listening to you, because there's no way that I'm purposely doing something wrong. It's something wrong with them, because what I've been taught is to help them, that I'm doing good in the world by helping them. That being said, here's your drug. That being said, here's why you need to stop. Just ignore all those voices. Don't talk about them. Don't listen to them. Here's why I'm just going to keep doing what I'm told, because the minute I'm told that someone's like yourself is saying, hey, we need this, the world isn't what we think it is, we should probably approach this differently. It's going, too much of a change here. You're disrupting, you're disrupting my system.
Because you got to admit it. It's outer limits time. Mm-hmm. It is bizarre. I mean, if I hadn't experienced this all myself, I wouldn't even believe it.
Would you say that time with the guy you expressed his story about the changing of the voice, do you think that was the changing point for you? Like the pivot where you were essentially were like, this is it.
That's where my denial system completely disintegrated. It just completely fell apart. Right. And it was like, this is a whole different world, and I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know the rules. I don't know the game plan. I don't have a map. It's like walking around in the dark in a cave, just trying to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely.
But, I had an endless supply of schizophrenics because they closed down all the state hospitals. These guys, and they're expecting these guys to show up at these mental health centers to take these toxic drugs that they didn't even want to take when they were handed to them, let alone have them show up at a mental health clinic that might be 20 miles from their home. Mm-hmm. They ain't gonna comply.
Exactly.
So here you have all these homeless people who are mentally ill, who can't survive any other way than by robbing and selling drugs, and then they get sent to prison. So all the schizophrenics are now being sent to prison, and the prisons are full to overflowing with them, and the mental health care there is awful. They're brutalized, they're beaten, they're subjected to constant paranoia and a nightmare of an environment. And then when they're done their sentence 10, 20 years later, they're floridly psychotic, psychotic criminals and they release them on the public.
Mm-hmm.
Here's $50. Go, you're free. And they don't even know how to operate. Prisons are ridiculous. I mean, they are the most insane social institutions that we have, and they're doing hardly anything to help those people. Back in the old days, they tried. They had programs and they had, classes and jobs and that kind of stuff. Now with these private prisons, they could care less. They don't want to spend 1 cent more than they have to keep these guys confined. Exactly. The private prisons are the worst idea that they ever came up with, but they're paying off all the politicians. They pay them big money to, we'll handle them. We'll handle your prisoners at a rate cheaper than you could yourself. Yeah.
Would you say that and this is just my curiosity, would you say that in many ways these private prisons are basically an experimentation camp for a lot of these drugs that they're trying to get to market, and a lot of these different, because essentially, I don't know, I get the sense that they might already be through, but as you said, we don't really know anything.
The regular prisons and psychiatrists are the ones who are experimenting with those drugs. Oh yeah, we got a new drug. This will help you. That's the pharmaceutical industry said this is the best one yet. And they are improving the side effects. I mean, no doubt they are doing that. And not to their credit. I mean, and with some of these patients, the drugs are absolutely necessary because you can't reach them. They're so far gone, you can't reach them. Mm-hmm. And some of these guys are so dangerous that the only thing you can do is put them on antipsychotic drugs. Yeah. So there is a place for them. They're not all bad. They're not all evil because, before they had these drugs, the insane asylums were just out of control.
Yeah.
Now they can mass medicate these guys. They can keep them under control so they can get by with less staff. And then the prisons, what I saw, the only ones that get them are the ones that are causing problems. Now you can be psychotic, and as long as you're not causing problems, they're not going to give you anything.
Right. But they're not helping you either.
They're not helping you either. They're not doing anything to address the problems that you got in there with.
Mm-hmm. So
nothing.
It's fascinating, and I can be on here for hours, but I would love to wrap us up and give this for people to really ponder, really think about. And I'm going to read your book. I want to read the other book from John Mass, or I believe John Mass. And I would love to have you back on if we can dive more into your experiences, things you want to share, because I want to give you as much of a space to get this information out there. People need to hear this.
You know what I can do? I have one fella. He's now working as a mechanical engineer. So when he was a young man, he went psychotic. He spent over a month in a psych hospital. Mm-hmm, he was out of it. They were giving him massive drugs, shock treatments, that kind of stuff. And he's willing to come out and speak about it.
I would love to have him on. If he's willing to do it.
I talked to him. He only can speak on weekends.
That works for me. Weekends work great for me. Once we come off air, I would love to chat about that, and as well as the people who work for John Mass. I would love to see if they'd be willing to chat as well. Because what you guys are doing, again, this gentleman's story is that, as you said, people who believe right now that they or someone they loved there's no hope for them. There's no outlet. There's no cure for this. And as you made clear, and you're showing, it's no. There is a way. It's just, we need to know we need to know the truth first, as you said, and everything you already outlined. And I want to create as much of this platform, or any of the platforms that will be willing to have you on, share this information, is going, more people need to hear this, because as we go through this and more people are feeling these demonic voices speaking louder and louder for more people, is being able to know that there's people like us and people in this realm also going, we're here to help each other. We're here for each other. We want to see everyone be the best version of themselves in the image of God, in the image that we were created and designed to be. So, I would love to, once we get off, we'll talk more about that. But if you want to leave any last little, notes or comments, things like that,
we put a lot of information on our website at jerrymarzinsky.com. That's MARZINSKY. Go to the blog, go to the articles. There's programs there that will help. We put a lot of information on there.
Awesome.
You can sign up for a a counseling session, and we'll
Wonderful.
get you in. I'm like 2 months behind, but we'll work in there somewhere.
Absolutely. And I, being that you are backed up, anyone who is listening who has family, this and that, I recommend going back, listening to the books that, Jerry's book, but also the book by John Mass. Start doing the research for your family.
Oh yeah. So this is the book. I mean, this is the first step of understanding what the voices actually are.
Okay. Wonderful. And I'm going to be pushing that book. I highly recommend everybody else gets that book, whether or not you have someone who's quote unquote clinically psychotic. It's important for everybody to start paying attention to that, because everyone knows the last 3 years we saw a mass shift in people's, basically their morals. And we realized a lot of us are going, what just happened? What is this person doing? What is going on? And so if we read this book, we read the books, the articles, go to the website, before you even try to reach out to, Jerry in regards to one-on-ones, start doing that research yourself.
Yes.
Start trying to make sense of it, so you can do it yourself.
You have to have that basic foundation in there first before we start moving into the more advanced stuff.
100%.
To go into your subconscious and start getting that stuff out. You have to have the basics down. And most of it's provided free between the book and our website.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yep. And that's also the one thing I always talk about in my training is we have to be out of this mindset. Even though Jerry's bringing up such great information, he's facilitating people's healing. No one can heal you. It is within yourself. It's within your capital self, as self, and as well as your living being, this existence, this, as you said, energy. It's within you.
And it's not as simple as taking a pill. You're going to have to do the work.
Exactly.
I can guide you. I can walk you through it, but you have to do the work. And some of it isn't easy.
Absolutely. Well, Jerry, I'll say this here today. This by far was my favorite conversation. I felt it from beginning to end, and it's not a knock to all the other shows I've done, but this one really hit home because there was a lot of synchronicities that led up to this conversation. So for that, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you taking my invite. And for those listening, I know they're excited. They can find you at jerrymarzinsky.com. They can go to there. All your information, I'm assuming, is there if they want to reach out, blog, everything, as you said. But I just want everyone to know that we just had what we would call a banger, a great conversation, and I really enjoyed it. So, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
everyone. It's guys like you that are going to get this out, because it certainly isn't going to get out through the mainstream media. It's not going to get out through the educational system. It's not going to get out through psychology or psychiatry. They've already made that clear. They made it real clear.
Exactly.
This is going to have to come up from the people up.
Yep. And more people are willing to listen, and I can assure you of that. So I thank you for the kind words. But yeah, it's going to be one of those things that we're going to see a shift in the right direction. I already feel it. I already am experiencing it through my own life and the people that reach out through the show. So anyway, Jerry, thank you so much. Everyone listening, thank you. And on that, we'll see y'all next time. Bye, guys.